After the massive success of Legacy of the Dark Knight, it has left many people wondering what TT Games' next LEGO game is going to be. So today I'm going to talk through what some of the things I think might be the next LEGO game, as well as some things that, while I don't think it's going to be a game that they make, or some games that I would like to see them make. Um, so there are two obvious ones to start off with that we can eliminate immediately and say that that's not what their next game is going to be. It's not going to be anything DC related because their track records show that there is roughly about 3 to 5 Lego games released in between every DC related game. Um, and because they just did Legacy of the Dark Knight, they're going to at least have 2 or 3 other Lego games released before they do a sequel to Legacy of the Dark Knight. So DC is immediately out. They're not going to do another one of those right now. They're going to do something else. And we can also throw out Star Wars because they just did Skywalker Saga, so they've already made a game with all 9 movies, and they're not going to do another one right now if they ever do another one again, especially because a lot of people want to win with Skywalker Saga, and since they already have a game with all 9 movies in it, they don't really need to make another one, at least not for a long while. So with both of those out of the way, we can now go through some of the things that they might do. Obviously, with the new format that they are doing with Legacy of the Dark Knight, there are a few things that come to mind that would immediately work well with the new format. And then inside of Legacy of the Dark Knight itself, there's also a few things that they have teased that could maybe be the next Lego game. One big thing in particular. So let's start off with an obvious one of a Lego Marvel game, right? They have made 3 already, and one character who would work really well with a game similar to Legacy of the Dark Knight is Spider-Man. They could do a Lego Spider-Man game. There's been a lot of Spider-Man movies, so there's a lot of stuff that they can pull from. Spider-Man is probably the next character next to Batman who has like the most movies made about him and like the most media that they could pull from. So Marvel is definitely a good option. I could see them doing a game similar to Legacy of the Dark Knight that they kind of style after the Insomniac Spider-Man games and pull inspiration from all 3 of the Raimi trilogy movies, the TASM movies, and then the Home trilogy, and then Brand New Day at the very least. Obviously, Tom Holland's going to have another trilogy, so if they did Spider-Man as their immediate next game, they wouldn't have his second trilogy to pull from, really. But I could see them definitely doing a Lego Spider-Man game set within the same universe as the other 2 Lego Marvel Superheroes games, as kind of like a prequel to Lego Marvel Superheroes 1 to kind of show Spider-Man's origin and all, and kind of what he got up to before that first game happened by drawing inspiration from all of the movies and the different shows and then the Insomniac games and all that. So I definitely think that Spider-Man is a very good option and is definitely something that I could see them doing as their next Lego game. Then another one that I think they could do is something else that they've already made a game about, which is Indiana Jones. They've already made 2 games about it. Since they made their last game, there's been another movie that's come out. They haven't made any Indiana Jones games that actually have dialogue in them, so it would be a first, and it would kind of bring them back to how they started, where they started by they did 3 Star Wars games technically, but we'll just say 1 with the complete saga, and then they did an Indiana Jones game, and then immediately followed that with Lego Batman the video game. So releasing a Star Wars game, then a Batman game, then an Indiana Jones game would kind of bring them back to what they did originally. And I think Indiana Jones could benefit from the Legacy of the Dark Knight treatment, where you have a very limited character roster, only about 9 or so characters, with all of them having special abilities and all, because Indiana Jones is a franchise where the only character anyone really cares about is Indiana Jones himself. So you don't really need a massive character roster, because you're just going to have to fill it up with a bunch of random useless characters that no one's going to play as anyway. Right? So you really just need Indiana Jones, Indy's dad, Short Round, and then a few other characters from the 5 movies. And I think making one game to kind of have all 5 Indiana Jones movies adapted into a Lego game, finally having one with dialogue in it, and giving it the Legacy of the Dark Knight treatment, where small character roster, combat focus, but also having a lot of puzzles and all, and giving all of them their own special abilities, making each character feel unique and special so that you have a reason to play as each character, I think would really help an Indiana Jones game. So I could definitely see them doing Indiana Jones as one of their next Lego games, if not the next Lego game. But there is one game in particular that they did seem to be teasing in the game, and that is Lord of the Rings. Now, Lego Lord of the Rings I don't think would really fit with the format of Legacy of the Dark Knight, because there are a lot of characters that are important that people would care about way more than just a few. But I think they could maybe model it after a different game, which is the PS2 Lord of the Rings game, this one right here that I have. I think if they modeled it after this and did something similar to that, and modeled a Lord of the Rings game after this, and kind of tried to do something similar to this, it would work, and would set it where you don't have to stay within like one new thing where they do things like similar to like the Arkham games and all. They could do it where they make Lego games that are inspired by and draw inspiration from other famous games and like other types of games, and use that for franchises, right? So I think doing a Lego game similar to the PS2 Lord of the Rings game, or even like maybe making a Lord of the Rings game that's kind of similar to God of War in a way, could work really well. And they had the ring from Lord of the Rings in the Batcave, so I definitely think that they did kind of tease it a little bit in Legacy of the Dark Knight, and they could definitely find a way to make it work. And with the last game from that universe that they made, they didn't finish the story like they said they would, so this could be their opportunity to redeem themselves from that and do all 3 Hobbit movies as well as all 3 Lord of the Rings movies, and put them inside of one game that is, massive in scale, like a large open world, and has a larger character roster than Legacy of the Dark Knight, but still, a smaller, more compact one as a whole, because there are a lot more characters that people would care about from Lord of the Rings, but there aren't like a huge amount, and I think giving each of them like a unique ability, or at least for the most part a unique ability, would benefit a Lord of the Rings game greatly, and could allow them to redeem themselves for the Lego Hobbit game, where they did not finish the trilogy like they said that they would initially do. So I think that that's probably the most likely option out of those 3, but I could also definitely see them doing an Indiana Jones Lego game and doing all 5 movies. That way they have all 5 in a Lego game and can really probably make the best Indiana Jones game that they've made by limiting the character roster to the handful of people that are actually important, that people actually care about. Indy, his dad, Short Round, the girl from Dial of Destiny, Shia LaBeouf from The Crystal Skull, Marion, and a few of the other characters from the different movies. Because there's not a lot of people that are really memorable or important in the Indiana Jones universe other than just Indiana Jones. So I could also see him definitely doing that. And then obviously Spider-Man fits perfectly with the same format as Legacy of the Dark Knight. So that is definitely a very likely option. I could definitely see them doing a game on Spider-Man that is similar to Legacy of the Dark Knight. But Lord of the Rings does seem like it's probably going to be what their next game is because of the ring in the Batcave. But, there are a few games that I would like to see them do. I don't know if they're going to, but I'd like to see them do a Lego game on it. And I think one of the big ones that they could definitely do, especially with the Legacy of Dark Knight format, is a Ninja Turtles game. Because, you can have, the characters be, obviously, the four Turtles, Splinter, April, Casey, and then that's all that you really need for a Turtle game. And there's a lot of villains that they can do, and they could easily tell an original story set inside of the world of the Ninja Turtles. And you don't need a massive character roster because as far as like the good guys of the universe, the protagonists, there's only about 7 that people like really know and like truly care about, and that the average Joe would really know about. There's only about 7 characters there. So I would definitely like to see them do a Ninja Turtle game at some point, and kind of give it the Legacy of the Dark Knight treatment with like small character roster, a lot of focus on combat, making the combat challenging and all, and having a lot of combat focus and all in it. And I think that they could definitely do a good Ninja Turtle game if they modeled it after Legacy of the Dark Knight. I don't know if they're ever going to. It's probably not likely, but I would definitely like to see that eventually. And then another game that they could maybe do with the Legacy of the Dark Knight format is the James Bond game. Like years ago, they were going to do one. Like they even released like a trailer for it and like some test footage, but they scrapped it because they deemed it would be too violent. But I think if they did a James Bond game and model it similar to Legacy of the Dark Knight, they could pull it off and make it work really well. Especially because the James Bond movie, James Bond's the only constant with those movies and all, and by eliminating the character roster, you could just have it where each of like the different people with James Bond in the different movies is just a skin for another character, so you can limit the roster a bit and find a way to make a really good James Bond game by modeling it after Legacy of the Dark Knight. Again, since they already tried to make one and they scrapped it, I don't know if they're ever going to make one, but I could definitely see them pulling it off with the Legacy of the Dark Knight formula. And then I think that a Lego Dimensions 2 could be something that they could do eventually. Obviously, the Toys to Life thing died years ago, with roughly when they released Lego Dimensions Phase 3. That is about when the Toys to Life thing died. But I think they could do something similar to Funko Fusion, where you have a game based on a toy brand that takes all of the different IPs that that toy brand has worked with over the years that they've existed, and they combine them into one game that is where the characters are not trapped behind a paywall. You don't have to buy each one individually. You just pay for the game by itself. and you get all of the characters by playing the game without having to buy them individually. So they can do a sequel to Lego Dimensions by solving the one problem Lego Dimensions had, which was the money. It cost way too much money to get Lego Dimensions and complete Lego Dimensions. So if they did a Lego Dimensions 2 similar to Funko Fusion, they could make this massive Lego game that could maybe even be better than Legacy of the Dark Knight if they did it right. And really, I think that Lego DC Supervillains post-credit scene gave them the groundwork that they would need to do a Lego Dimensions 2. They could essentially adapt Crisis on Infinite Earths, but in the larger Lego universe. And because Lego Dimensions is canon to the Lego Batman universe, but not any of the other universes, it's been established that the Lego DC multiverse is connected to all of the other Lego games that exist. So, if you did a Crisis on Infinite Earths in the Lego multiverse, you would essentially have another Lego Dimensions. So I think them doing a Lego Dimensions 2 where they, go and they pull in all of these different IPs and pull them all into one game and do this massive in scale Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, where all of these different characters from all of these different IPs have to come together and fight the Anti-Monitor to save the Lego multiverse. It could be a really great game and could be a way to do a really awesome, massive, large in scale Lego game that could top Legacy of the Dark Knight, but is also a sequel to another game that they made that, while people like the game, the biggest problem that they have with it is that the whole game is trapped behind a giant paywall. Then people just can't afford to play the game and beat the game because it costs way too much money to do that. So I think Lego Dimensions 2, that is loosely adapting a Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline in the Lego universe, could be really awesome, and I could see them maybe doing it eventually. Probably not as like the immediate next game that they do, but I could definitely see it happening and see them doing it at some point in time. And then, there is one final game that I would like to see them do at some point. And I think that doing something kind of similar to what they did with Legacy of the Dark Knight, but obviously tweaking it to fit the character, would be really good. And that's Doctor Who. They've worked with Doctor Who before when they did Lego Dimensions, so clearly they're at least at some point were willing to work with TT Games, and probably still would be. And we just had the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who a couple of years ago, so I think you wait till they have the 70th anniversary, wait till that comes around, and then release a Doctor Who game in collaboration with the BBC and Bad Wolf Studios as kind of a 70th anniversary special for Doctor Who, where they release a massive Lego game. And you can have the way that they did it with Legacy of the Dark Knight, where obviously the Doctor, you can choose your Doctor and you unlock different skins as you go along. Like have it, you can start as a specific Doctor, and then as you play the game you unlock different Doctors, and you can choose to be that Doctor or stay as the one you started as, and have it where that will maybe change the voice a little bit, and obviously changes, and you can do like Lego Dimensions did, where your Doctor changes what the TARDIS looks like on the inside. And then also have the companions be kind of similar, where some of them can do different things, but most of them are just kind of regular people. So have it where they're just a skin for a specific person, where they're all just a skin, and you can choose your companion until you get to where you unlock certain ones that have different abilities that they can do throughout. Like River Song would be a separate thing from all of the other companions, and then when he was traveling with the Master at one point, that could be like a separate thing where he has to team with the Master, and you can choose your skin there, and give all of them like different abilities. And he has like such a massive rogues gallery of aliens and all that, like, he fights on like a recurring basis, that they could really come up with like a great original story set inside of the Hooniverse, with a Lego game, as like an anniversary game in collaboration with, Bad Wolf and the BBC, and could make a really great Lego game based on the Doctor Who franchise. I don't know if they're ever going to do a solo Doctor Who game, but I would definitely love to see it at some point. But yeah, I think the most likely thing that they're probably going to do next is Lord of the Rings, just because of the ring in the Batcave seems to really be hinting towards it. But I think that Indiana Jones and Spider-Man are probably the next two most likely things. And then all the other things that I talked about are just kind of games that I hope they make one day. I don't know if they will. I'm definitely hoping for a Dimensions 2 that adapts Crisis on Infinite Earths at some point, and then also a Doctor Who game I would really love to see one day. But yeah, let me know what you guys think the next LEGO game is going to be down below in the comments. I'd love to hear like what you think the next LEGO game is. What LEGO game do you want to see them make? And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Also subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. I'm sure if you like this video, you'll find, some other videos on my channel that you'll enjoy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all next time. Goodbye.